Now, if you're a marketer worth your salt, you know how important it is to be running optimization, A/B testing within your online marketing at really all times, because optimization or testing is a thing that's going to allow you to go from making good campaigns or good marketing automations or campaigns or ads, etc., to take them to great and to get you extraordinary results. Now, the thing is, when it comes to actually designing experiments or designing optimization within campaigns or within ads, when you look online and try to find resources for how to do this, there's not many people who actually have a deep understanding of how optimization works, because they normally just define it as split testing, like A/B testing, and they give a very shallow sort of information or advice as to how to actually choose variables, how to run split tests, how to actually look at data and statistics and make decisions based on that. And what they normally will do instead is just show you how to actually input the test into the software, into the Klaviyo, into whatever software or paid ad system you're using. So today what I want to do is actually run you through a much deeper level explanation of how to actually run split tests, how to run optimization, how to look at data, how to analyze data, and then how to make decisions based on that. Because honestly, I haven't really seen many people do it within email marketing to the level that I'm going to try to do today. So let's jump straight into it. Okay, so this is a document that runs through the sort of foundational principles and the things that you need to know when you're actually running a split test. This isn't how to actually implement it. This is just the sort of thinking behind how to design tests, how to look at data, how to make decisions based off of data, which is really all we're going to talk about today. And we'll save how to do this specifically for campaigns and flows and automations and whatnot another time, because that's an entirely different video, and I sort of want to emphasize how important it is to know how to know the foundational principles behind optimization and how it works before you actually start designing different experiments and different tests. So the first thing up here is some definitions. So if I say anything that doesn't make sense or you don't understand what it means, then you can look up here to see some definitions of words that some people might not know or understand fully. So I won't go through it now. I just want to put that here for those who are quite sure. Next is the common pitfalls that I've seen or that I see within the online marketing space. So when I was researching this video and coming up with this, I basically went through and watched all of the email marketing optimization guides, tests, examples, and whatnot that you could find. And it shocked me how many were advocating or promoting a very inefficient or sometimes flat out wrong ways of running split tests. So the things that I seen were too small sample sizes, people not considering or not using or advocating using big enough sample sizes, too small of time periods within, like such as people only advocating or telling other people to only use single campaigns for running split tests and they're making decisions based off of a single campaign. Next is only using or looking at one metric when it comes to analyzing the data and that is being produced from a split test, which I'll explain why is also not the correct way to do it in my opinion, or what I see or from what I know. And a lot of the times it leaves room for people to make subjective decisions looking at not enough or false data, because especially as marketers, everyone has their sort of own theories on what should work, and it's very easy to be influenced by your own sort of mind or your own thinking as to what should win or what is winning. And many times people make decisions against the data based off of their own preconception. So that's what we want to avoid at all costs, and that's the whole kind of point of this. So the first thing that we need to think about is systems thinking. So I made a video on this. If you don't know what systems thinking is at all, or if you haven't thought about it applied to email marketing at all, then you can watch this video linked here. But it is basically a way of looking at email marketing that allows you to more easily understand which aspects of the email marketing affect different metrics or different KPIs within email marketing. So this is the sort of system of email marketing here. If the email marketing system was 100% efficient, then for every email that you sent, you would get a purchase or a buy. But this obviously isn't the case. So there's lots of different things that affect this, and the things that stop this from happening and stop this 100% throughput of emails sent to buyers or purchasers are bottlenecks. So bottlenecks are the things like email deliverability, how many people open the emails, how many people click through the emails, and then the conversion rate of the sales page are the main bottlenecks within email marketing. And the things that affect this are the different variables that we can change and that we can test to get better results within the email marketing. Now, the thing to consider is a lot of times when people are running split tests, they will look at the subject line, for example, and only look at the open rate as being the metric that they should look at or that they should account for. But what they don't think about is how the variation will affect the rest of the email or the rest of the metrics, because really within email marketing, we are trying to optimize for revenue, and revenue will be our North Star metric that we are going to be optimizing for above all else. So when you play it out in your mind, the subject line actually affects the whole email, because really it not only does it gain attention and get people to open the email in the first place, but it frames how people are going to perceive or read the rest of the email. So optimizing for open rate, or only looking at open rate when it comes to testing subject lines, for example, is not the correct way to do it, because the variation or the type of subject line that will get the highest open rate will likely not be a subject line that will also get the highest click-throughs and the most revenue, or produce the most revenue. A good example of this is like clickbait on YouTube, when videos are very obviously clickbaity or clickbaited, and people click onto the YouTube video but they don't watch the whole video through, and they don't become a subscriber, or they don't watch the rest of the person's content. When it comes to email, is also very easily sort of thought through. Like if you make a very big promise within the subject line, or it's a very clickbaity subject line that isn't congruent with the rest of the email, then yes, it'll get a higher open rate, but it won't get higher click-throughs and it won't get higher purchases. So you need to think about how this variable affects the whole system, not just this one KPI. So this is why you need to think about all the metrics, or this is why you need to look at all the metrics that you can look at, and not only think about what is the most sort of obvious metric that it's affecting. But when I was looking on how to run split tests, there's a lot of people out there that were only advocating or telling people to look at the KPI or the one metric that it's affecting, and this is, in my opinion, completely false. And if you do this, then you'll eventually end up optimizing for the wrong metric, and you get marketing that will not achieve the end goal that the marketing is supposed to do, which is generate revenue. So if you want to learn more about how systems thinking works and whatnot, then you can click this video and watch it here. But let's get on with the rest of this video. Now, testing sequence is another thing that people often get wrong, and I've seen people talk about it in the wrong way as well. I didn't really see anything out there telling people in what order you should start your split testing, or in what order you should test different variables within your marketing. Now, arguably the best way to do it, and this is from what I can find, or at least from what I can think through, and this makes the most sense to me, is to test from the top down. As in, within this system here, it would be tests from the left to the right, because by doing this, you can allow for higher throughput at the very start of the system, which will give you the most amount of data, because there's the most amount of volume of people sort of going through that first part of the system, which will give you more data to make better decisions on. And then when you come to run the next split test or the next optimization sort of round, you can go on to the next step down, and then you already have a higher throughput from step 1 onto step 2, which will give you more traffic to sort of run, or more traffic which will give you more throughput of contacts that'll give you more data to make better decisions on. Now, the only time that you wouldn't start from the top down is if there is a very obvious bottleneck that is restricting the whole system that you can see quite obviously. But if you don't know, if based from that sentence you don't know how to do that, or you don't know what that would look like, then I'd recommend just starting from the top down, because you can't really go wrong. So now within email marketing, it starts from testing the from name, the subject line, stuff like that, send times, not starting from the bottom up, which would be call to action, the sign off, the button color, or something like that. Now, this leads us onto how to really design experiments, how to design optimization. The first thing that I'll talk about is the importance of defining clear variables. What exactly are you defining, and what is the difference between those two? Now, what I mean by defining clear variables is what is the variations between the variable that you're testing. A good example of this would be, instead of saying morning versus night, if you're testing send time, a bad way to determine this would be variable A is morning, variable B is night, and then it might be 6 a.m. versus 5 p.m. or 9 a.m. versus 7 p.m. And by not defining exactly what the differences are and what are the constraints of these different variations, then it makes it a lot harder, or makes it a lot less likely that you're going to be able to utilize the results or the winner from the results, or learn from the results of that optimization or from that test in the future, because it is murky and there's not clear defined winners. There's no clear boundaries on what is a winner and what is a loser, because they're murky and sometimes they overlap. So defining exactly what the differences are and how they're different, so you know in the future how to leverage the results from that optimization to get you better results. When it comes to sample size, or when should you start running split tests, a good rule of thumb is don't run any split tests to anything less than 1,000 contacts, as in the total sample size is less than 1,000 contacts. So that's probably within campaigns. Don't run any split tests, or don't send any split tests to a segment or to a list that is less than 1,000 contacts, with 500 people receiving variation A, 500 people receiving variation B. And then within that, you want to run that same test or test that same variable for multiple campaigns, because one certainly is enough, because you want to test it across different campaigns, across different days, across different types of campaigns where possible. This is especially applicable for testing things like send times and from names and subject line tests, but is less applicable for things like campaign specific variables like the actual subject line or the actual lead or the actual call to action or the actual body. So the smaller your sample size is, the more iterations of the test you have to run to get statistically significant data. If you had a very large, or if you have a very large sample size, then you can either A, get more results faster, look at results faster because you have more people that are going through that experiment, or you can B, test more variants of the variable. Like if you have 50,000 contacts, you might be able to run 10 different variants of one subject line at one time and run that test multiple times, and then you'll have a clear winner of 10 different variants, which is extremely powerful. One thing to consider when you're looking at the data that is coming in from campaigns or coming in from optimization or any tests that you're running is that don't look at data that isn't more than at least 3 days old. From what I've seen, most campaigns take at least 3 days for 90% of the data to sort of come in when it comes to the click-through rates and the open rates and stuff like that. But for some lists, it can take like up to 7 days, especially for older lists or for lists that contain more of people that are 55, 65 years older. They can take up to 7 days to sort of interact with their email marketing at all. As I've specifically heard from some of these contacts that they will sit down on the computer once a week at their desktop and go through the emails. So that's something else to consider. Different demographics and different types of contacts and people interact with their email marketing differently. Now, when it comes to choosing variables that you're testing, rule number 1 is test one variable at a time, or test one thing at a time. Do not try and test send time and subject line and from name at the same time, because you're not going to learn anything. There's too many different variables interacting at the same time, and the results will become murky as you don't know what actually caused the better or worse results. So test one variable at a time. And when it comes to testing the different variations of that one variable, choose really obviously or the most different variables that you can. Like for example, if you're testing send time, choose 6 a.m. versus 6 p.m, like the total polar opposites, rather than choosing 6 a.m. versus 7 a.m. Because normally when you do this, you can learn a sort of meta lesson from that, which is such as sending in the morning performs better than sending at night. Rather than if you send at 6 a.m. versus 7 a.m, you don't really learn much else except from specifically what performs better 6 a.m. versus 7 a.m. And the odds are the results that you're going to get are going to be very similar. Like the more similar the variables are, the variations of the variable are, then the more similar the results you are going to get back. So test one variable at a time and choose or test the most different variations of the variable as you can, or at least do not test very similar variations. Now, when it comes to actually running the tests and running multiple tests over and over again, you want to prioritize on getting conclusive results over running multiple tests at a time. I see a lot of people out there talking about or telling people to simply run 1 to 3 campaigns, looking at one variable or looking at send time or the from name or something like that, and then making decisions based on 3, which for most of the time, like 99% of the time, that isn't the right thing to do. Unless you have a huge list and then campaigns are sent across several weeks, that is definitely not the right thing to do. And what you should be doing instead is running tests for several weeks to a month and then making decisions based on the data that you get over a longer time span, because by extending the time span on which the optimization or the test is running, you can see how the variations of the variables form during a lot more conditions. So instead of just sending 3 campaigns over Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you are sending 10 campaigns over a month on different days of the week to see what the average of all them tests are, as opposed to just doing it over 3 days and only getting results during them very specific conditions. Now, this is something that I'll talk about more in another video when I actually talk about how to run split tests within campaigns specifically, because you want to look at averages more than you want to look at individual results from specific campaigns or specific A/B split tests. Especially when you're talking about, or especially when you're testing variables that are going to be used or sent across all or many more of the campaigns in the future. But I'll save that for the next video and I won't talk any more about that now. The main lesson I'm trying to get across here is prioritize getting conclusive results over running many split tests, because the last thing you want to do is learn the wrong lesson and take it as gospel, rather than taking your time, getting more data, getting better results and learning the right lesson, even though you may learn the lessons at 1/2 speed or 1/4 speed. Because again, you're going to, if you learn the wrong lesson, it'll hurt you again and again until you figure out that you learned the wrong lesson or you learned the wrong thing. So prioritize getting conclusive results over running lots of tests. Statistics analysis is something that I also see people doing wrong all the time. As again, this is the part where you need to be looking at the results from all of the metrics within the test that you're running, rather than just looking at one KPI. So a good example of this here is this split test. Now, what you see in front of me is a test where we were testing 6 a.m. versus 6 p.m. and we sent 20 campaigns, and these are the average statistics for this test. As you can see, variation A, open rates, variation A, click-through rates, and then variation B, open rates, and variation B, click-through rates, with the totals and the averages all laid out here. As you can see, the variation B open rate got 41.99% open rate average over 20 campaigns, while variation A got 41.35%. Now, some people might say that's not statistically significant, but it is when it's averaged out over 20 campaigns. So when you're looking at averages over larger data sets, the difference doesn't need to be as dramatic as it would within only running one campaign or 1 to 3 different tests. So we've essentially run 20 tests using the same conditions and the same variable, and we're going to get a much better average, or a much better idea on how the variations of the variables will perform compared to us just running 1 to 3 tests. Now, if you're using the traditional sort of approach to only look at the open rate as the KPI, then you would choose variation B as the winner. But what you wouldn't see is variation A's click-through rate was 3.59%, while variation B's click-through rate was 3.23%. So the question that I would ask you, if you were to look at this and you were using that old framework, is would you rather get that extra less than 1% open rate, or do you want an extra compared 11% click-throughs? Because really that's a question that you have to ask. So it's an obvious when you think about it this way, like you would rather an extra 11% total click-throughs as compared to getting slightly more opens, because really click-throughs are much more valuable, or a much more valuable metric to use or to look at than open rates. Now, another example of this is this here. This one actually includes revenue. So this is a more updated test where we included revenue, and these are the averages based on 17 campaigns that we sent out. So you can see here how we've included how we've attributed the revenue, so we know how tight or how much we should weigh these revenue numbers. The attribution conditions within these campaigns were clicked or opened within 1 day, as in revenue was only attributed if people clicked or opened and then bought that same day. So we would say that's around 85 to 90% accurate. So we can look at the revenue numbers to be a significant indicator on how well the variations perform as well. We were testing 5 a.m. versus 5 p.m. here, and as you can see, the open rates between these two, variation A and variation B, were not significant at all, with only a 0.35% increase in open rates, which some people would look at and say it's not statistically significant, but what they wouldn't look at if they were only looking at open rates is that variation B got an extra 20% more click-throughs and produced 80% more revenue. So even though the KPI was not majorly affected and didn't produce huge results, it affected everything else within the system of email marketing. So again, you need to look at all the metrics rather than just the KPI, and use your North Star metric, use revenue, if it's being tracked correctly, as the main indicator for what it's there. Because again, the goal of the marketing, the goal of the email marketing is to produce revenue, not to get the highest clicks or get the highest opens. Now, a few more considerations when it comes to testing is the cost of testing. There are some tests that sort of take a lot more effort and a lot more time to implement than others. For example, like offer testing or different email send schedules or completely different email type testings that take a lot more to test rather than just testing the subject line or just testing the lead or testing small things. So it's easier and sometimes more efficient to just get the easy wins and do the small tests first before jumping into the deep end on doing the bigger tests. Once you're optimizing for a long time, there's a point of diminishing returns where there's another cost of testing where you have this past winner that's already doing well, and the odds of you beating that winner definitely isn't certain. So there's a good chance that if you run that test again, then you will get lower results or worse off results during the test period, because it's already a known winner that you've tested for, and the odds of you beating that again becomes less and less the more and more you improve it. So that is another cost of testing that you need to think about. And then lastly is be mindful of all the different variables. There are tons of variables going on within email marketing at any one time, from holidays, global events, sales events, work schedules. Like there's literally so many variables that can easily produce skewed results. So really what this means is to be cognizant of other variables that may be influencing the results that you're getting. And the more variables that you can be aware of, then the better off you will be able to see construed results based off of extraneous variables that aren't exactly the thing that you're testing. Lastly, just to sort of reiterate the importance of testing, as David Ogilvy said, never stop testing, and your advertising will never stop improving. Really, if you can keep testing, and if you continuously run tests over time within any one campaign or any one marketing automation, etc., then you can make it at least work, and then make it great, and get it to a point where it can produce you extraordinary results. But a lot of the times it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of resources, whether that be money or labor. One last tip I'll leave you with is documenting your ideas. Especially as entrepreneurs or as marketers, we have this tendency to come up with a lot of ideas, and when we initially come up with them, we are almost always the most emotionally attached to them in the very beginning, and we want to implement them, and we think they're the best idea. To stop this from happening and to sort of get this impulse out of your head and out of your mind, what I recommend is simply making a document of ideas, and whenever you have a new idea, just write that idea down, get it out of your head, free up that space in your mind to focus on other things, and then when you do need to run another test and you do need a new idea, you have this document full of all the different ideas that you've had in the past, and you will no longer have any emotional attachments to them because the time's passed and you forgot about it. So this is all I've got to say on optimization for now. This document will be available for you in the description below. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask me. Again, I doubt I've explained this the best way possible, but I hope this document, or providing this document to you as well, will help you better understand it and better understand how to actually design tests and how to make decisions based off the data that you're getting in a better way, and stop you from falling into the trap of running bad tests, running bad optimization, and then making poor decisions based on bad judgments. So that's all for today. If you like the video, please feel free to leave a like, and if you want to see more videos like this, you can subscribe. Within the next month or so, I'll release some more videos on how to actually implement this within campaigns and automations within email marketing. But in the meantime, cheers.